Yes.
And what is it?
It's the report for the passenger migration survey done in 2016 and 17.
And that survey was performed within the footprint for the Emerson West Wind Project.
Yes.
Would you go to page 2 of the main text of that document?
Yes.
Is figure 1 on that page the map showing the project area?
It's a map showing the Emerson West project area, yes.
Mm-hmm. And do you know whether any of the land inside of the footprint for the Emerson West Wind Project as it existed at that time is currently within the footprint of the Republican Wind Project?
I did see a map showing that there was an overlap at the north end of this site and the south end of the Republic site. I couldn't tell you the percentage though. I just know that there was some overlap, unless these maps were different.
This map also shows locations of monitoring sites.
Yeah, I can make them out. Oh, the lettering, yes. And the dots next to the letters, yes.
Do you know how many of these monitoring sites are currently, let me start over. Do you know how many of the monitoring sites shown on this figure are located on land that is currently within the footprint of the Republic Wind Project?
I believe I saw a map that showed, I think these point count locations to look at the overlap, and I think some of them did overlap, but I don't have that map. Didn't bring that map with me up here. I think you have received a copy.
And your response with respect to the overlap between the Emerson West project and the Republic Wind project was comparing the final Emerson West project area to the currently proposed Republic Wind project area?
I believe that was the map. There have been many, and I've been confused more than once.
Go to page 3 of this report. Directing your attention to the first paragraph on page 3. The last sentence states that there were 18 monitoring sites. Is that correct?
Yes, located near forest habitat within the project.
That first paragraph on page 3 also mentions the recommendation in the ODNR guidance that there be one point count location for every 100 hectares of combined forest, shrub, and wooded wetland habitats. You see that?
Yes.
Can you tell from this report whether that recommendation was followed?
Well, if you divide 18 into 1,751, I think you get 100 hectares.
All right. And according to this page, these surveys were generally completed, and I'm looking at the second paragraph there, first sentence. states that surveys were generally completed weekly from April 1 to May 31 and August 15 to November 15, correct?
Yes.
And what year was that?
Two 2016 and 2017.
So studies were done between April and May 31 for both 2016 and 2017?
Those time periods in those 2 years.
Okay, so during 2017 and 2016, the periods of April 1 to May 31 and August 15 to November 15 were the periods of time during both years in which surveying occurred.
Yes, August 15 through November 15, 2016, and April and May of 2017.
Okay, so it's the opposite of what I had assumed. The survey detected the presence of some bald eagles. You can look at the executive summary.
Thank you.
Last paragraph on page I.
2 bald eagles, yes.
Thank you.
All right, we'll set that document aside. All right, let's talk about bald eagles for a while. Go to page 4 of your testimony. Answer 7. I'd like to refer you to the last line on that page, where you will see a reference to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service 2013 Eagle Conservation Plan Guidance. You see that?
Yes,
Are you familiar with that guidance?
yes.
I think I'll mark a copy of that document so you have it in front of you to assist you in answering questions about it. Or I'd like to mark that as LR Exhibit 15.
Okay. Shall we so mark?
handed you what has been marked as LR Exhibit 15, entitled Eagle Conservation Plan Guidance, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, April 2013. Is this the document to which the last line on page 4 of your testimony refers?
Yes.
What, if anything, did you do to determine that any of the bald eagle surveys listed in answer 7 of your testimony were performed using methods consistent with LR 15?
I first read the documents, the survey reports, and having done these, cooperating with in compliance with the Fish and Wildlife Service guidance document, this guidance document, for several years, I pretty much knew what the guidance document was asking for and what the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in meetings has also asked for.
Let's look at page 25 of LR Exhibit 15. On the top of that page, there is a title that states "For Site Categorization Based on Mortality Risk to Eagles." Do you see that?
Yes,
And then under that title, you will see a Category 1, Category 2. On the next page, we have Category 3. You see that?
yes.
Can you explain to me what's meant by these categories?
I think it's pretty explanatory right there on the page. If you look at Category 1, it said high risk. Potential to avoid, to mitigate impacts is low. B, moderate. C on the next page, minimal risk to eagles. And then it has certain criteria that it uses.
For Category 1, on page 25 of LR Exhibit 15, it states that a project is in this category if it, number 1, has an important eagle use area or migration concentration site within the project footprint, correct?
That's what it says.
Does a nest within the footprint of a project constitute an important eagle use area?
Not necessarily.
What, in your opinion, determines whether it is?
Whether it is a high-risk site?
Whether it is an important eagle use area?
Is this for golden eagles or bald eagles? Because this
Bald eagles.
guidance document is for both.
It's for bald eagles.
You're asking the question for bald eagles,
That's correct.
but this document is also was written primarily for golden eagles. So there's a major league difference between what the risk categories really are.
Are you saying that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service does not use these categories to evaluate risk to bald eagles?
They somewhat do. You have to realize when you talk to them, they're flexible, because bald eagles are not nearly as susceptible to collisions as golden eagles, especially golden eagles in the western part of the country. That's what this rule was originally written for. That's just as bald eagles started to explode in the eastern United States. They use this document, but it's a flexible document They want to be in on what the site is actually like, if there are golden eagles on the site. That's why you have meetings prior to, going into and studying projects, or even prior to trying to develop a project. Big difference between golden and bald eagles.
If you look at the second paragraph under category 1, you will see that it states as follows. In addition, projects that have eagle nests within 1/2 the mean project area inter-nest distance of the project footprint should be carefully evaluated. See Appendix H. If it is likely eagles occupying these territories use or pass through the project footprint, Category 1 designation may be appropriate. Did I read that correctly?
You did.
Does the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service follow the statement that I just read to you when it evaluates risks to bald eagles?
In part, they do. Since 2013, they have changed some of what they actually ask developers to do based on empirical information that we've been gathering on actual risk to bald eagles, especially here in the eastern part of the country. I've been involved in numerous sites where I've spoken with Fish and Wildlife, this is personal experience, out west where you have golden eagles and in the east. And it's a very, very different way of doing things because bald eagles are not high-risk animals. In the west, you have golden eagles, which are much higher risk animals. And that's where these original rules came from, this guidance came from.
What is the empirical evidence that you just referred to in your answer?
170 studies of post-construction fatality studies done across North America. That's what I base most of what I'm saying right now. I also base it on studies that I've done at sites that would qualify as high-risk sites to eagles, where no eagles, no bald eagles were ever killed. I can give you a list of those sites. You can look along the lakes, the shores of Lake Erie, where there are, on the Canadian side, there are 32 projects that have turbines close to the lake, yet the fatality numbers are very, very small. Despite the small fatality rates, we're seeing eagle populations soaring. So that's one of the reasons that the Fish and Wildlife Service is being more liberal in monitoring and in following this guidance today.
With respect to the bald eagle fatality data that you've just mentioned, is that the data that is reported by the wind companies?
It's actually reported in peer-reviewed journals now. There are about 4 of these reviews that have passed peer review to look at the total numbers of individuals of all kinds of species killed. But you also have a lot of this data available. Some of it is done by the wind companies. Most of it is actually, yes, in collaboration or in cooperation with the Fish and Wildlife Service and often the various DNRs in the state in which they're done.
So it's the wind company that reports to the government agency how many eagles are killed, correct?
It's actually the consultants working for the wind company, and we follow federal laws.
Okay. Do you know whether the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has applied the 1/2 mean project area inter-nest distance formula to the Republic Wind project?
I'm sorry, you mixed something there that I didn't understand.
Yeah, I'm just reading, I'm reading from the language on page 25 of LR Exhibit 15
I see it.
that I read to you about the inner nest distance.
Yes.
My question is, has the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service applied this formula to the Republic Wind project?
I believe they did, yes.
And they did that with respect to some bald eagle nests that were located outside of the Republic Wind project area, correct?
Yes.
To your knowledge, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has not, at this point in time, determined what the inter-nest distance that will be applied to the nest that has now, or the eagle nest that has now been found inside the footprint of.
Objection. The
Could I-
foundation for the statement of the eagle nest that was just found.
That was earlier established in Mr. Kerlinger's testimony.
Objection, I don't know what was established in his testimony.
Well, if the bench wishes, I'll do it again. It's no
Let's do
problem. Earlier in your testimony, you stated that you had received some information from the testimony of Dawn Hepp that a eagle nest has been located within the footprint of the Republic Wind project. You saw that testimony, right?
It was allegedly found there. I don't know any of the details.
Okay. Assuming that it has been found there, are you aware of any action that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has taken with regard to that nest?
I can't assume that it was there.
Well, am I also to assume then that you're not aware of any U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service action with respect to any nest that might be within the footprint of the Republic Wind facility?
I have no knowledge of that.
Okay. Tell me how the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service calculates the inter-nest distance.
They look at the distances between the nests and then they do a calculation of what that half internet distance is.
And in what area do they use the nest data in order to come up with that calculation? I'll rephrase the question. It wasn't very well phrased. You said that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service calculates the distances between eagle nests. My question is, what area does the eagle nest have to be in before it is included in that calculation?
They look in a larger area surrounding a project site because that helps them determine what the population density may be and the population numbers in that, I think it's a 43-mile radius area or some of that, and then they come up with that number.
Okay. So depending on how many nests that there are within that area, the inter-nest distance can vary from time to time.
It's constantly varying because with bald eagle numbers increasing so dramatically, there aren't going to be too many sites that have half the internet distance, internest difference anymore. There's just so many bald eagles out there.
Go to page 57 of LR Exhibit 15. refer you to the first full paragraph following the bullet points on that page.
Okay,
Specifically look at the sentence that starts on the fourth line of that paragraph, starting with the words, "We also reiterate."
yes,
That sentence says, "We also reiterate that these and most other surveys should be conducted for at least 2 years before project construction, and in most cases across all seasons." Did I read that correctly?
yes.
Okay. Do you know what this sentence refers to when it refers to most other surveys?
No, not exactly.
Go to page 58 of LR Exhibit 15. And I'm going to refer you to the first paragraph of that page. And I did just read at least part of the first part of that paragraph, which states, "The first case, i.e. one above, is the use of point count data to validate whether a proposed project meets Category 3 criteria when Stage 1 information is inadequate. Based on experience with current parameters of the prior term in our predictive model, see Appendix D, we calculate an average of 20 hours per turbine as an optimal level of annual sampling via point count survey. For example, equivalent of 10 4-hour point count surveys at each of 20 sample points for a 40 turbine project. Our 20-hour recommendation considers the hazardous area created by a generic 2.5 megawatt turbine with a rotor diameter of about 100 meters. Sample effort for turbines with smaller rotor diameters would be less." Did you see that?
Yes.
Can you explain to me what all of that means?
I can try. But I'd have to go back and look at what Stage 1 information is involved. I can tell you that their predictive model, they're collecting data, just so to explain to you guys, you go out in the field and you set up a set of points. And at those points, you position somebody twice a month, and they will be there for 40 minutes or an hour, whatever your time period is that you're looking for. They will take observations on whether or not bald eagles are seen within an 800-meter radius circle, and the height of those. So that circle, is a cylinder, it goes up to 800 meters high. So you collect the data there, and you give it to them at the end of your year, 2-year period, depending upon how risky a potential site is deemed to be. Also, that is if they want you to go out and take the measurements for a site, because they don't always ask for it. In the case of Republic, they did not ask for an eagle conservation plan, so they didn't really need to go out and measure the eagle use. However, they did in 2 different years, one with 20 points, one with 29 points. So they got a pretty good idea of how many eagles are out there, what they're doing out there, how often they're out there, and they put those types of numbers into a model to see how many birds would actually get killed. It's a complex model, It's yet to be truly well vetted. Only a couple sites have done it, and it doesn't always come out with the predicted number of eagles killed on that site, on that particular site. I did one in Michigan, and we spent 2 years looking for carcasses of bald eagles up there. It was supposed to be a high-risk site, and none were killed, none were found dead. And that's what I meant before about bald eagles not being a high-risk species. So you take these numbers, you go through that, they go through the model for you. You can get the model online in a statistical package if you wish to run these yourself. And from that, you can tell what the absolute risk is likely to be. But for the Republic site, the risk was thought to be low because of the small numbers of eagles that were seen during the 2 years of study out there. Sorry if I gave you more than you wanted.
Actually, you didn't give me quite as much as I hoped. So let me follow up with another question about this language. And that is with regard to the recommendation to calculate an average of 20 hours per turbine as an optimal level of annual sampling. First of all, with regard to the size of the turbine to which this recommendation applies, that size is a 2.5 megawatt turbine as stated there, correct?
Yes.
And that turbine model, as expressed here, has a rotor diameter of about 100 meters, correct?
Give or take, yes.
A larger turbine, that is a turbine that has a larger rotor diameter, would pose more of a risk to bald eagles than a turbine with a rotor diameter of about 100 meters, correct?
It's never been empirically determined to be correct.
Then why does the U.S. Fish